This whole idea of erasing history, of redefining things,
Right.
erasing it, getting it out of people's minds, it didn't start with the George Floyd riots.
No.
It didn't start there. You know when it started? It started when public education became a thing. Did you know that public education was fought against by the Christian church violently? Now, when I say violently, I mean in a Christian way. There were no riots. And there was no looting, but what there was a violent intellectual opposition to public school education. It does become. I know that it comes as a shock to Christians today. It was a shock to me, to us, that public education wasn't always a thing, and that public education was fought against by the Christian church because there were ministers, there were Christians that said, if we do this, if you give the government, if you give the state control of education, they didn't have it before. It was all private and it was excellent. Did you know that? We were one of the most highly literate and educated countries in the world, like in world history, and that was all private education. Education was controlled by private institutions, homeschooling, private education. It was done in churches, all that stuff. And it was like through the roof, amazing. We developed some pretty amazing people in this world through private education.
Yeah.
It wasn't government controlled. And they said, you do this, you give the education system over to the government, to the state, and that means the end of Christian influence, and it means the end of Western civilization. That's what they argued. They argued that. And then what happened? We lost. And public education became a thing. So let's think about solutions. How do you stop the indoctrination of our children? Like, you want to talk about axe to the root sort of a thing?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? You got
abolish government schools.
Yeah, you got problem weeds. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Do you want to go cut the tips off of them? Let's fix this up, or do you, how do you
Edward Scissorhands?
Yeah, just what are you gonna do to it? Like, talk down to it or something? I don't know. Like, what do? You pull it from the root. If you're gonna take down a problem tree, you got to get to the root, or it's coming back, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like Luke said, the answer to the indoctrination problem is the government schools. Abolish public government-funded education. Do away with it. Brothers and sisters, if you have your children, we didn't used to be so bold about this.
No.
We didn't.
Not at all.
We didn't used to be so bold about it, and we still want to be gracious about it. But brothers and sisters, please hear me on this. If you have your children in public school education, they are being indoctrinated in an opposing worldview, and there's no way out of it. There's no way out of it. It's what is it? 7 hours a day of indoctrination. And all the arguments that we used to make, because I used to make them too. I was there. I want to send my kids into school to be missionaries. I don't want to remove the Christian influence from the schools. It's like you expect your 8-year-old to be a missionary in the school. Really, you think that's how they're working? Bad company corrupts good morals. And if they're surrounded by bad company all day long with an opposing worldview, with authorities above them who have an opposing worldview, you think your 8-year-old's going to fare well there? No. They're being indoctrinated in an opposing worldview. And if you say, well, when I get them home, I'll disciple them. Let's be honest. Think about 2 weeks of classroom hours, okay? Let's say it's 7 hours a day or 6 hours a day at school. How many hours is it?
I think it's like 30 hours a week they get.
So say it's 30 hours a week. So say 60 hours a week. Be honest, dads. I had to be honest myself years ago. We had to be honest. 60 hours a week. 60 hours in 2 weeks' time. Question. How much time do you spend specifically discipling and indoctrinating and educating your child in the Christian worldview over 2 weeks? Be honest. Can you compete with 60 hours of class time?
Nope. In
2 weeks? Can you? Be honest. No, you can't. Can you compete with that if you homeschool your kids? You're dang right you can. Can you compete with that if your kids are in private Christian education, good private Christian education? You're dang right you can. Yes, you can. But you can't do it when you have years and years and years of indoctrination. It's weird. It's funny. You'll have solid Christian parents, people that are godly, amazing, Jesus-loving believers. And all of a sudden, you see these kids that are raised in these homes with these godly parents under the Word of God, with the Word of God,
Right.
going to church. And all of a sudden, you see 17 years old, 18 years old. These kids do what? They're like professing homosexuals.
Right.
They're going off into the world, doing all kinds of crazy things. And they're like, what happened? How come you believe all these things? Oh, I wonder why they believe all those things. Could it be that they were taught a view of origins throughout their whole education history that was antithetical to Christian origins? Could it be that they were taught a view of society and history that's antithetical to everything we believe as Christians? Could it be that they were taught an ethical system in school? I mean, think about it. You're like, an ethical system? What do you think sex education is in schools? You think they're talking about ethics there?
Right.
When your kids and my
Morality.
kids are in public schools learning sex education, do you think they're learning the Christian view of sex? No.
The answer is no.
The answer is no. When they're going in there, they're being told everything goes. Experiment, figure it out. You know, if you don't think you're a boy, maybe you're not really a boy. Maybe you can live a different way. You can do you, baby. And they're being taught an ethical system. And then you have specific stuff going into the education system in terms of indoctrination that changes what history really was, changes who these men and women really were, what they believed, does not give you the full picture and understanding. It just gives you like brute fact. George Washington, first president, white guy, owned slaves. Like that's, it's brute facts, nothing, no context, no understanding, nothing at all. And so it's also an abysmal education. Can we just admit that too? It's abysmal. I'll say in the more modern vernacular, public government-funded education sucks. Okay, that's the modern vernacular. You want, like, what's the lowest you can go in terms of like describing how awful it is? It's not even any good. And people admit that in the public school education system. Do you know what you can do if your kids are homeschooled and Christian private education schooled? You can actually control the quality of their education. Mm-hmm. You could say, they're not doing well in this area. They need to do better. I need to find better curriculum and maybe better tutors in this area. And we need to work on this area. And you can control that. And you know what else you protect them from? All the lies, all the indoctrination. It's not to say that our kids are going to grow up perfect. They're not. They're not going to grow up perfect. They're going to be sanctified. If they know Jesus, they're going to be sanctified just like you. But in terms of our responsibility as parents, protect them from this garbage. So when President Trump is talking about the erasing of history and the indoctrinating children, brothers and sisters, there's a reason for it. And we can't just say, America, America, I'm going to love American values. You better have an answer. You got a problem with the indoctrination? You see all these young college-age kids acting a fool in the streets of America over the last couple of months. Listen, they've been here the whole time.
Yeah.
They didn't just become stupid.
Right.
They didn't just become foolish all of a sudden overnight. This is their worldview. This is what they were taught. This is the ethical system they believed. And when they had an opportunity to be unleashed, I'm not talking about the peaceful protesters. That's good and allowed, and everybody should have been speaking out against injustice of the police. I'm talking about the people that went and shot random people on the street, or beat up random people of a different color, or destroyed black businesses, or burned buildings to the ground. These people were running amok because this is how they were raised.
Yeah.
They were indoctrinated. I bet you, watch. It's a good social experiment. If you took everybody that was rioting and looting over the last 2 months,
See if they were public school.
and ask them, could you all raise your hand? How many of you guys were homeschooled?
Yeah.
Like, how many hands do you think
And
would
there's
go
probably
up?
a 0%.
It's just, I don't know. Maybe one straggler here or there, like, some weird guy with, skinny jeans on or something, and it's like, I hate my dad, like whatever. I don't know. Maybe he was playing too much TikTok.
If anyone that was
I don't know.
anyone that was homeschooled was probably because they had to be, because they got kicked out of public school too many
Right,
times.
but ask the rioters and the looters, how many of you guys were public schooled? How many of you guys were private schooled? I think you would have a pretty solid answer.